Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
What is happening?
All right, look at this.
This is the
Crazy.
funniest thing ever.
Welcome.
I'm happy we didn't do it online the entire time, because we kept missing each other.
Sure.
That would have not happened,
Of course. We have to stop talking. Because
then,
then, because
that's
all
true.
of this amazing stuff is going to be lost.
That's true.
So
It's true.
Oh, dude! Now that I know who you are, this is candy. Podcasting remotely can be a real pain. It's quite challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Zencastr has this all-in-one web-based platform and makes the process really quick and easy. That's the way it should be, right? Just focus on the podcast. So let's talk about the quality and the challenge of recording online. So Zencastr gives crystal clear sound and really nice HD video. I know I don't use it, but it's there. Now that's not even to mention how easy it is to use. Like even for my guests that aren't even that tech savvy. There's nothing to download. They just click on the link and start recording. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and everything from local recording to automatic post-production in the tool. You don't have to leave your browser to get the episode done. Maybe you want to make podcasts as well. I mean, I think it's a great idea personally. Obviously, I'm running one. I think you should make one too. It's easy. Just do it. I actually use Zencastr. If it sounds great, that's because the platform works. And if it sounds like crap, that's because I've done something wrong. But Zencastr really does give me amazing quality for my guests. If you go to zencastr.com/pricing, blah, 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 and enter this promo code, look, it's already long and confusing, and I'll just make it easier by putting the link and the promo code in the episode description. If you do that, you get 30% off your first 3 months. So that's actually pretty sweet. So look in the description for the link and the promo code, and then you get 30% off to start doing your own podcast. Do it. Go for it. Zencastr.
Well, at the beginning, I gotta be honest, I just want to deliver pictures to show where I was, right? Like, look, I went to Hawaii. Look at this picture. That's awesome, right? And over time, it developed to a kind of like a replacement for memories. Like, it's not the picture as such. For me, it is the journey behind the picture that it took to get to the picture, right? So I went to all kinds of places all over the world, mostly remotely. And obviously, I did some research about what do you want to shoot, right? I got more and more into photography as such, with the techniques and everything. I'm not professional, but I think semi-professional. So I'm trying to get the best shot out of whatever I get, but it is sometimes hard to get to the places where I get to, right?
Sure.
And then when I get to the place and I take that picture and I come home and I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is awesome. It's not that I think it's an awesome picture. I remember the road it took. I remember maybe the sleepless nights. I remember, sometimes Mongolia, like you haven't had running water for like half a week, that kind of stuff. And so that's what I see when I look at my pictures.
Thomas, how does your father and mother, how do your people say your last name?
Spaeter.
Yeah, Thomas Spaeter.
Exactly, but no one would say Thomas, right? If you pronounce the name that good, the last name, then you probably say Thomas.
Oh, Thomas.
Yeah, but
Thomas Spaeter.
But it's Thomas is good. Thomas is good, right?
Was heißt Aufklärung? What is the Enlightenment? That's the only German I know how to say.
Oh, okay.
Like, what?
Why don't you know how to order a beer in German?
Yeah, we'll get to that later. Let's first, before we go to dive into your photos, we have to talk about where we are, how we got here, what's going on. So we are in Toronto in a Holiday Inn. We were emailing each other a whole bunch to say, can we meet, talk online and everything. As it happens, we're both in Toronto on the same weekend.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, we have to make this happen.
Yeah.
So I came here. I didn't know what you look like and everything. So for the listener, Thomas Spaeter is very handsome with these piercing blue eyes.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. Nice tats. Very nice tats. Your shirt has 2 cleavers, or is that like a shaving?
That Distorted People is a German brand.
Oh, okay.
So that's why no one really knows it well here. My best friend introduced me to it, and I like it because I'm like tall and I find hardly things in my exact size. If they like slim fit, then I'm a bit too much weight on me to wear slim fit, right? Okay. But those are like long
nice.
cuts. So
I get the impression, and certainly in the audio, it's going to come out. Have you had coffee?
No.
You don't drink coffee?
I don't drink coffee at all.
You don't drink coffee?
No.
Dude, your energy level is insane.
I wake up and I'm all in every day.
I love it.
You know, when people talk about morning people, that's me. I wake up, I'm productive in the morning. I can't, as the day goes by, I get more focused on at the end of the day, it's going to be my reward. I'm going to watch a movie, go out on the ocean, go swimming, whatever.
Amazing.
But I wake up and I need to get stuff done.
Yeah.
I need to feel like I need to reward myself at the end of the day. Some people hold off and they just wake up slowly, and I'm like, you can write an introduction chapter of a book by the time some people wake up.
Right. So on the podcast, I had Anna, I think Anna Blocki,
right,
who said, "Oh, you have to talk to Thomas because he's amazing." And I was like, "Okay." So that's the introduction. I mean, that's how we crossed paths. We agreed to meet in the hotel. I had no idea what you look like.
Right.
I didn't remember how we met. I was just like, okay, well, let's see what happens.
Yes.
I haven't looked at the photos. I love this. This is crazy.
Yeah, it's even crazier for me because I recently just met Anna like a year before, we meet now.
Okay.
Because I met her at a conference in Greece.
Oh.
When we did some science conference together.
Wow.
Then we did a research project together. So she's Polish German, went to Hong Kong. I'm German, went to Greece. That's where we met. And then she introduced me to you living in Hong Kong, and now we meet in Toronto.
So isn't the world is amazing. The world is amazing.
Insane.
So the podcast is about, okay, we only have one life. How do we make every second count?
Right.
Which is probably, given your energy, why Anna thought, we would have a good conversation. Just from what you said. Now, you're a scientist?
Right.
By trade. Are you a tissue engineer?
Yeah. Same thing as Anna. Regenerative medicine, right?
Fuck. What was your PhD in?
I did skin replacements and worked on the vascularization. So we developed a method how to, once you put scaffold, it's what it's called, into like a patient, usually it takes a very long time until new blood vessels grow into it, right? So by the time they grow into the scaffold, if you seed that scaffold with cells of the patient, they will die by the time oxygen gets there.
I love it.
And we created a method to seed these scaffolds with intact fragments of the blood vessel system. So they just reconnect to each other, and then the entire scaffold becomes vascularized super fast. And so the patient would have to stay in the hospital up to 80% less of the time.
Right.
Until it can be released.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the thing, you look, don't judge a book by its cover. Okay, so we meet it's 8, 9 in the morning. We meet this Holiday Inn off the airport in Toronto. You show up. You look like a DJ. You got the two earrings. You got the tats all over, and then coming out of your face is this stuff about tissue engineering.
Right,
dude. Who are you? It's amazing. Okay, so should we dive into the photos?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So excited. So this was called Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Right.
2022.
Right.
Do you want to describe what people see? Not what it was, but what the image itself. So, because somebody who's listening has to have a sense of what are we looking at.
Yeah, it's a rather dark picture in a valley, kind of like a canyon that has a waterfall at the end of it. It's like, I would say a big waterfall.
It's big.
I place myself in front of it for the purpose of the scaling, which I always do. I don't need to be in the picture, if the main focus is on the waterfall, but the purpose of that is that, you see the size of it, because otherwise it could just be a very tiny drop, you wouldn't know. Right. So it's very dark. It was in winter. It was right before sundown, and I wanted to be there off season, so that's why there are no people, so there's no one photoshopped out of the picture or anything. Because as I said, I always seek isolation on my trips if possible.
Right. Okay. So the image is it's, as you said, very dark. So it's essentially like the waterfall in a kind of canyon. So there's walls on the right, walls on the left, or maybe it's just flat.
Right.
And the waterfall itself is probably maybe 3 or 4 meters across, but probably a good 5 or 10 meters up.
Yeah.
They're pretty tall.
Yeah.
The light balance is beautiful. We tell just by looking at it, in terms of the color rendition and in terms of the composition. And so you had it on a tripod.
Right.
You obviously shoot with really nice gear because the image is just deliciously beautifully So what gear are you shooting with?
I was a Canon 90D.
Okay.
And I think for that one, I just had my 75 to 90. I actually can't remember what lens I was using, but I remember that it was like I had a hard time taking this picture because of the drop of the waterfall, the mist coming from it, pushed back.
Pushing into the lens.
And so not only did I have to use the tripod, I also had to use the timer because I'm quite far away.
Right,
so I had the Bluetooth remote and the timer. So what I would do is I would go to the tripod, I would focus on the waterfall like for a second, then cover the lens with my hand, initiate, the 10-second timer. Then I would uncover it, run, and notice it doesn't give me enough time. Because if I took the hand away and started running, by the time I got to the point where I'm standing, the lens was completely covered with water. So it took me many, many trials to like see how far away do I have to go so that the water accumulation on the lens is not too big to destroy the picture, but still close enough to not, get out of the scaling. And so
it's nice because I don't know if the mist or whatever gives a softness to the light.
Yep, true.
It's very dark, but it's also it's a nice sort of silvery softness. But look, realistically, the fact that it's shot in Bosnia-Herzegovina, probably saying that wrong, but of all the waterfalls, why that one?
So I have this kind of travel addiction. I have the map and I try to go to a new country all the time. Like when I can, I try to check off another country, right? And I'm
like Toronto. Ding.
I'm into that kind of stuff, and obviously, like as I said now twice, like the isolation is a thing, right? So the whole Balkan countries, like Serbia, Bosnia, Albania, it's still not like developed for tourism, right?
Right. Okay.
And as soon as I started to realize, you're gonna move out of Germany soon to California, you have like 8 weeks. I was looking at my world map. I was like, okay, there are like 7 more countries in or like around Europe, like it was Albania, it was Bosnia, it was Iceland that I didn't get to see because I didn't want to spend a short 3-day trip. I want to discover this in more time. And that was one of the countries. And so I started like Googling, what kind of waterfalls are there. That's just waterfalls, canyon, mountain ranges. That's the kind of stuff I look up first.
Nice.
I found this one. And surprisingly, there were like not really many reviews about it.
Okay.
I saw how beautiful it looked in the pictures that sometimes were taken like with a phone. It looked like as they walked by, they just quickly snapped the picture and walked away. That's how those pictures look like. But I could see that this waterfall has a potential to like be shown in a very nice way.
One question, because we're just meeting, and okay, so what led you to photography? I mean, why? Like obviously, over time, you thought, I like doing this, and then you realize, I can get a good image.
Right.
But then, to specifically invest in the gear to go, one is you got the desire to travel and to go and find these places. Okay. That's one separate desire because some people will just do it and go look. But part of that process for you is to bring the camera, know the gear, which could be sometimes very heavy gear or whatever, set it up. So what brought you to photography?
I think just one thing led to another. It's just, I guess I needed an actual camera. I mean, I'm coming from out of times when I'm talking about my first trip ever was in 2004. That time didn't even have proper digital cameras.
Sure.
Right. So you would have photos that you could not see before you got home and develop them. And so as that started to become more and more commercial, obviously the first generations of cameras, I didn't buy like a DSLR for like 3,000 euros or whatever. But once it became more affordable, we grew a bit older, and then I was doing the payments on my first camera because I was like, I could pay it, but it's more comfortable to pay that off in half a year.
Right.
And then it was like a circle. You bought the camera right now. That thing is worth a lot of money, and you don't really know what to do. So other people get the information first, then get the camera. For me, it was vice versa. I had the camera, and now I forced myself to get better at it.
Right.
And so as you get better at it, the picture turned out to be better. And they would never be perfect. You would go on YouTube videos. You would see Peter McKinnon, like this guy. I love him. He explains everything in such a way that you like think, I thought I knew everything, but I didn't.
Good.
Right. And then, it's just like now about the perfection, because you could shoot this picture in like 5 different angles and 4 of them would look really stupid.
Right. So, what's great is that compositionally, it's very well balanced in which, the actual waterfall itself, the brightness basically cuts through the image where it starts right with the sky, which is overcast, so quite bright. And then you've got, I think it's overcast. And then you've got the whiteness of the water coming down and then sort of splitting on the rocks below.
Right.
And your standing there placed really right in the focal point of the lowest part of the image. So, it's beautifully composed. I had a person on, I'm bad with names, but anyways, I had a person on the podcast I was just like, so talk to me about photography. And I just met him, and he was a stock photographer. Mm-hmm. And that's how he started. Mm-hmm. He learned how to do photography as one of the original stock photographers for one of the major stock.
Probably Shutterstock.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Uh-huh. And so he learned just by editors saying, no, this photo's crap because we can't use it and so he learned how to make photographs
right
according to what would sell. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at this, it could very well be a great editorial photo, a great features photo, so do you ever sell your photos to stock?
I think a year ago I started putting pictures on Shutterstock. Mm-hmm. Because I also thought I had a lot of great pictures, and some of them sell more often than others, but it doesn't really bring you money.
No, got it. Well, that's what he said too. He said that it's so competitive now.
Yeah.
That he in the photo series that he offered, one of them was just a photograph of a baseball, like it's called a diamond, right? Mm-hmm. So in people in the US, baseball is really huge, and it's just basically somebody standing there, and it's very crisp, very sharp. It's like a perfect photo of a straight baseball diamond with the grass and everything. Totally boring. Completely boring. But he said, I put this photo in there because this is my best seller. Mm-hmm. By far. And I said, really? He goes, yeah, because for editorial, people...
Yeah.
Okay. So it just talked about that side of stock photography.
Yeah, one of my friend's best-selling picture is a close-up of cartridge. Like, a very close-up picture of paper. Mm-hmm. Like, people probably use it for, like, recycling pictures or whatever.
Is that funny? Yeah. Okay. So let's take that very, very, very boring end to this beautiful, beautiful photograph done in Bosnia as the introduction to the next photo. Can we go to the next photo?
Sure. Let's move on.
I'm so excited. Okay. Okay. What? Okay. Yeah. So we've heard about how you like to go to remote locations that most people won't go to. So the title of this photo is Chernobyl 2019.
Right.
In the photograph it's a very moody image in the sense that it's in a kind of a human space, like the outside or courtyard of, say, an industrial building. It's kind of dirty and grungy and cobbled. There's a lot of moss kind of growing. In the middle of the photograph, which is what makes the shot, is a sort of really boring wooden chair with this sort of beige upholstery. And on it is a sort of old styled, you can look at it, it's quite dated. It looks like a 1940s, 1930s
right.
A gas mask from the Cold War era. So, and we know it's in Chernobyl. Wow. What? Okay.
Yeah.
As a scientist, how smart of it was? Well, wait. No, actually, I've heard there's a lot of wildlife that's sort of taken over Chernobyl.
Yep.
It's come back.
Yep.
Okay, so take it away because I have more questions than you have maybe answers. But go ahead. What is this?
Well, as I said, with checking the countries on my map, I always wanted to see Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
And then I didn't even plan on going there. Like, this was like kind of like a short notice trip. Like, two friends with my wife and me in Germany said, hey, there's a long weekend coming up. You want to go somewhere? And then I have a hard time committing to someone else's travel plans, especially when it goes to a place I've already been. Okay. So I said, guys, what about Ukraine? Then my friend had to check because he's in the military. There are certain countries he can't go. He said, Ukraine is fine. Actually, if you've never been. Heard it's a very nice city, people are very nice. And then we went, I think on a Thursday night, we got there Friday, so we had Saturday, Sunday, and we would go back on Monday. And I said, hey, I'm going to just research what we can do, because that's what I always do. And I said, did you guys know that Chernobyl is like really close, right? This was not intentionally. And they said, Chernobyl, why would we go there? I'm like, okay, let me just do some more research. But I mean, if they offer tours and everything, I mean, it's Ukraine, you couldn't even say that means it's safe. Yeah. Right?
But if you can.
But then again, you have the people that are locals that guide the tours. And I mean, they would know, right? I mean, they wouldn't expose themselves to going into like the exclusion zones, what they call it. And they have, I actually forgot the word. The little devices that measure the radiation.
The Geiger counter.
Yeah, the Geiger counter. And so that was more for like entertainment purposes. So they would say, okay, there are certain areas that have still a high, radiation.
Yeah.
We will pass through them every once in a while, and then you would all hear the sound of the Geiger counter go up and whatever. And they just would point out there would be tiny hills. They said, these are not hills by nature. This is like where people collected all the nuclear waste and they just, kind of like dig a hole and put it there, and then, over time they filled dirt on it. And that was in the actual area where the buildings were, the living houses, like not skyscrapers, but as you know from Israel, maybe, big buildings like blocks with, hundreds of people living there. All, of course, no one lives there anymore.
Right.
But there was a chair, and it was already like this, but it was way off the side. So it was back in this corner here or something. Sure. And you do not touch anything, right?
Right.
But I managed to, over like the time of 10 minutes, like slowly push it with my foot into that little path in the middle. Now that I look at it, I wish I had places back here. But yeah, too bad. But my main focus was probably that black background. And then once I had, my wife was like, "What are you doing with that chair?" And like, just hold on, I know how it's supposed to look like, right? So I was moving that chair, and then
that is fucking great. Thomas, having so many layers of questions to ask you. Okay, let's start from the beginning. As a photographer, knowing that you're going to, so in your mind, you had this sense or this feeling of this is how I want to compose this shot, and then you kind of edged it out and composed it. There's a bit of post-processing that you can sort of tell in terms of the
bit more blues.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's really arresting. And of course, what makes the shot is the sort of the gas mask thing, and the title that says Chernobyl. Now, we live in this crazy world, right? Where you moved to California and we're kind of like exchanging. I really decided to move back to Canada last week. It wasn't being impulsive. Some people might think it was impulsive. It was an impulsive action that took 5 months to take. Fine. So then, but I really just decided, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to book the ticket and left. And then we end up meeting, and then here we are, and it's like, I'm looking at this photograph. And what's insane is that I was trying to get people who are Ukrainian or connected to the Ukraine to kind of talk to me on the podcast. And I've had 2 people so far. And then I didn't know you were going to do this. And so what's your filter being German, having been to Ukraine relatively recently, and then in terms of what's going on now with the war? Like what's going in your head?
Well, it is a very, very, very tricky question because apparently, I mean, always you can say all we know is what we see in the media.
Right.
I mean, I know a bit of how the people, like a sense of how the people were. I found they were really friendly, but then again, those people were not politically motivated or leaders. Or leading in politics. So maybe different intentions. And then again, some people say, but maybe Ukrainians are not, completely innocent. I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't really care. But like, it was Russia that invaded. It doesn't matter. I mean, if I don't like my neighbor and my neighbor doesn't like me, it's okay, but I'm not going into his house and say the kitchen is mine now.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes me the asshole.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter, right?
For sure.
And so it was a bit scary at times right before I left, because when it started, you really thought at the beginning, I mean, I grew up in a generation with no war, right? So you always think it happens somewhere else. Not to me. But then again, the whole NATO thing came up, like, that if they somehow get involved, any of the countries, then we will have a war.
Yeah.
Like, shit, I think that is a possibility.
Sure.
So it made me feel a bit on edge for a couple of days, and then for some reason it's still going on, right? Since 8 weeks? I don't know.
Yeah, that's been
and it's kind of like briefly every once in a while it pops up somewhere, but like it's not, most things are not interesting for the media to show over such a long period of time.
Okay, so here's this shot from Chernobyl. There's the ticking of the Geiger counter in the background potentially. When we have memories, in the sense that we stack our memories we remember what we remembered previously, and then from there we remember previous. So there's always that kind of that chain. But at any point, I can say to you, okay, take a detour. But how about you take a minute and go back to those memories, and then just claw up that earth to see what other memory comes up to you about that day that maybe you haven't talked about or you haven't remembered in a long time that made an impression.
Well, there is one thing that made a really big impression, because you would, after the tour ends, you would go and eat at the actual cafeteria of the nuclear power plant that blew up, right?
Wow.
You would eat there, and it's the exact place where the people were eating the day it happened and everything.
Wow.
And I was really close to the girl leading the group, so I was talking more about stuff, and not only the exclusion zone, also like, so how did you get into this job and whatever? And they say, well, it's good money. A lot of people here don't have, well-paid jobs really, and that kind of stuff. And it felt weird because, as I said, it was not intentionally. So when we got back home, I said, I knew what happened by history and everything, but I said, I actually want to watch the HBO show now.
Okay.
Because they probably work a lot on the visuals and everything. And now you've been there, and then that was really weird.
Yeah.
Like, it got weirder after I got home.
Right. Okay.
And the bus tour they do is they would show you the image videos they had, like, decades ago, to attract people to move there, to have this perfect life and living.
Right.
Every time they had timed it in a way that as they would pass these buildings here, they would have exactly that part of the video showing, like, happy life, move your family.
Yeah.
This is the
Isn't this great?
There in the playground, and then you see the playground, and it looks like this as you move by.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, this is really not.
And it's just kind of like how that messes with your head. Sure. And what language are you speaking with this?
English.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Because it's one of those things, like, when you're from an outsider and you look at it, it's just, you have to cross that barrier of it's so different and so new, right? And then, but once you're there long enough, it becomes super normalized.
Yeah.
Have you lived, where in California did you move to?
Anaheim. South California.
How different is Anaheim from other places you've been to? Is it just nuts, or is it?
I don't know. I mean, Anaheim is pretty overrun because it's like has all these theme parks, right?
Oh.
Not only Disneyland, there's like a bunch of them. So
that's weird.
It looks like a tiny Las Vegas, kind of like that one street they have. It looks like tiny Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
But it's obviously not.
I've heard Anaheim described as the Chernobyl of the United States. I'm just joking.
In terms of pollution, sometimes it looks like it.
Oh,
right?
really? Okay.
But it's like you can't really compare it to the rest of South California, I think, because of all that overload of like entertainment.
Wow, that's crazy.
If you move up or down a bit, north or south, then it gets a bit more normal in a way that it's just normal crap.
Are you there for university or for your
no, I got a new job.
Okay.
A new job, at the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Hollywood.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, commuting a lot, like an hour and 45 to like 2 hours per way every day.
You know what?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've had in Hong Kong, I had that kind of life. You realize that per week, if you work 5 days a week,
I did the math already.
Yeah, that's one full day in the car or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that my wife moved back to the States in August last year.
Oh, she's American.
She's American. She started her doctorate in psychology.
Okay.
And so when I moved, I had to put down a permanent address as I enter the country, and it is the address that she would live at the time. So we get a new apartment on the 1st of June, so in a week further up north, so my commuting will be...
Capiche. Very nice. Okay. Okay, you want to go to the next photo or what?
Let's do it.
Okay, fucking guy.
Everything sounds so much better if you curse.
What do you have in store for me?
I don't even know.
I love these because think, put yourself in my seat where you're having this conversation, and it's up to the person. You're sitting with somebody who's taking you on some kind of adventure or ride. Whereas in Bosnia, Chernobyl, and I don't know what's coming up. It's like a theme park.
I sent you 5 pictures. I don't even know what the next one is.
We're only going to use 4. So here.
Okay.
You have awesome photos. Okay, this one's called Mongolia. It's a shot of one of the first podcast episodes I had was with a woman who's Mongolian living in Hong Kong.
All right.
And so one of her photographs showed the incredible landscape, and it was just because it is so unique. And so in this image here, it's made from on high. It could be a drone, but you could be standing on a weird peak. I have no idea why, because you're looking down. And there's this sort of gray van with blued out rear windows. It's going through a river and not very deep. It's probably maybe 2 or 3 feet deep, or say half a meter deep. There's snow on the banks. It's extremely rocky. Up the banks, there's really fine grasses. So it's not very tall grass. It's super low. It looks almost like a golfing green. But because lots of vehicles have gone through it before, you see the tire tracks and whatever. It's in Mongolia. The water's pretty. It's an excellent photo. Yeah. What am I looking at?
Yeah, that was during a little road trip in 2019, like 10 days through Mongolia. I was using a drone at this point,
Okay.
and I had a driver. So usually I do everything by myself. But after a bit of research, and even talking to locals, they said, you can't.
You need a driver.
If you're more than one person, then maybe it's fine. But there are no roads,
Right.
as you see here, you know.
Yeah.
And this was just, you got lucky with this one. You can see tire tracks, but there were places there were no tire tracks.
Right.
He would just go straight through a field. I'm like, I don't know if that's going to end well.
Sure.
Because I'm not a
just
guy,
going,
right?
Yeah.
But, you know, the point is that he had to cross the riverbed, and this was at the end of the afternoon time on a day where it got super heavy snowfall during the night before. And he woke me up and he said, we have to, I mean, he spoke 5 words of English.
Okay.
Go. And I didn't know what's happening. Apparently, because the snow covered everything, he couldn't navigate by the cart tracks anymore he would usually use as a sense of navigation.
Right.
And so everything was just white. And he would always dip into the riverbed and be like, no, back out, and then follow the river for a few minutes, then dip in again to see, no.
Sure. Oh, to see how deep the water was.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And so at this point, and I also created an image film, that's why I have the drone with me all the time as well. There was just a very nice scene because it covers the whole 5 seconds of the car going in the water, going through, coming back out, and then cuts to a higher, angle of the whole scenery. But this was probably the most remote place I've ever been, because I've been in contact with maybe 5 people throughout 10 days.
Yeah.
Not including my driver.
Yeah.
And why I do trips like this one is I think a lot of today's problems in general, they stem from a lack of knowledge.
Okay.
May it be the knowledge of a different religion, a knowledge of a different culture, or whatever.
But we're human, right? And knowledge is our medium. So
exactly. So I always force myself into these situations.
Nice.
So he said, along the way, there were, not he, but the woman that owns the company, she speaks very well English, and then she assigns a driver to you. But she beforehand said, there are different places that have a few hotels. And I said, I don't want hotels. I want to sleep in the nomad camps.
Okay.
So he would bring me to a nomad camp. He would have to look, because he said,
I don't know if there's something there.
He said, go. He probably meant that they're moving, which is what nomads do, right?
Sure.
But then he would find them, he would talk to them, and for $5 he could spend the night. And these are the moments that I remember, because I remember there was a time he knocked on the door, opened, there was a woman breastfeeding her baby and the guy, and then they talked and they waved their hands at me. I was just standing there I don't know, that they were talking.
I'm German!
It's me. And so they were like, and you can see by their response that they said, no problem. And then he came to me, he said, dollar, and showed 5 with his hands, and I gave him $5. And so they would show me another tent, and I would set up my stuff, and then he came and said dinner, and then I walked back, and then the woman just handed that baby to me. I held it, and then everyone left the tent. I was standing there with a baby. I'm like, why would you put? But then you already notice that's your way of thinking, because you think, why would that person give that baby to a stranger? And then the answer is simple, because they don't have any reason to not trust anyone.
Right.
Because who would come to their place and do anything weird? I mean, you're in the middle, you're hundreds of kilometers from the next city.
Right.
If you screw with them, you're just not coming back.
You're stuck, that's a good point.
And I was sitting there with that baby, and they smiled at me, and after 10, 15 minutes, I would open the door with my foot, and I would see how they're on the horseback riding, putting the cattle together.
That is awesome.
And I was like, that's exactly the moments,
really
and that goes with everything. And if people would be exposed more to situations, cultures, religions, all that kind of stuff, then you would have probably the same result as when you grow up in a diverse city versus a small town isolated somewhere that has no exposure to foreign people.
Right.
Because that's by studies pretty much where you have a higher rate of racism is, where you never have been exposed to anything.
Right. Funny you should say that. In a previous podcast episode, he happens to be my cousin's son who went traveling around. He ended up in Mongolia. He ended up in one weird city. I don't remember which city. He's in Mongolia, and he goes, Ran, you know what's really surprising there? I was like, what? He goes, the amount of Nazi paraphernalia. Mm. Did you notice this?
No, not really.
He said there was so much German Nazism. It was just for them, it it was untethered to the history,
Huh.
but they just kind of walked around with all this paraphernalia, and so he was just like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah. I mean, I was just touched down in the city for like at night and headed out the next morning really early.
It's weird.
Yeah, it is.
Anyways,
weird.
it's very strange. But so sorry. Okay, so in terms of your photography, would you consider you gravitate more towards landscape, more towards nature? So one of the things about photography that people say is the most interesting subject to other people is people. Mm-hmm. People tend to like looking at photos of people. And the one thing so far is, well, there was you, kinda, in the waterfall.
Yeah, as a reference.
Yeah, as a reference point. But, and I know this is just really not artificial, but this is very highly, I guess, artificial in the sense that I say to you, pick 4 photographs of the thousands that you have to frame the conversation. And from that, I'm just jumping to conclusions. But how do you feel that this image or your images, when somebody comes to look at them, speaks to that notion of so inspiring other people or moving other people's emotions?
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason why the focus is on nature and landscape is, I think, people have to get a better awareness of how beautiful the planet is.
Yeah.
I also wrote a book like a year ago about the topic of overconsumption and overpopulation, because like the whole nature...
Shut the fuck up! No. Okay, we're going to go into there too. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm really concerned about the planet itself, which again is weird because like then I travel a lot, right? People could say, yeah, well, if you're that concerned, what about air travel
footprint?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, yeah.
But if I do travel, I'm always going on a low profile. Like on these trips, I'm not really like go with a low footprint as much as I can. But I want to show people like this is what you're messing up.
Right.
Like may it be Bosnia, may it be Mongolia, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's all the same system.
Biosphere.
It's all the same system.
Yeah.
So if we screw that up a little longer, then that's it, right? So that's the purpose of
Okay. Now, what is the title of your book?
It's called
Dude, like I'm saying,
it's German.
It's German. I know. Wait, 1 second. 1 second. Take this as a total compliment. I'm gonna punch you in the head. That's fucking amazing. Okay, so say it in German.
Die Überbevölkerung.
Die Überbevölkerung.
Yeah, the overpopulation. It's a provocative title because it's not what it is.
Yeah.
Because people tend to think overpopulation means too many people.
Right.
On too small of a space.
Right.
Which is not it. You could put I did like some math on the areas of different countries, and you could put every single human being on this planet right now onto the area of Greenland, and the rest of the world would be empty. So then I'll go chapter by chapter to tell people about like definitions and stuff, because a lot of people did a survey before the book and then based the chapters on the outcome of the survey, and then have everyone, it's also in the book, fill out the survey to see what they know about the topic, and then at the end go back, because the conclusion is also like the same order of the questions.
Sure.
And then most people will realize, I had a completely wrong idea about this and that and whatever.
Why isn't it being translated into English?
I don't really know. I just wrote it. Also did a lot of references, political references in Germany, and I don't know much about that in different countries.
Sure,
right?
sure.
So the main point at the end is that overpopulation is used as a term, and it is completely, you shouldn't use the word because it puts a wrong idea in people's heads.
Okay.
When I ask people what comes to mind when you think of overpopulation, you probably think of like a trash river, smog in the city, and all these kinds of things, which none of these things is just based on numbers. Like only, it's just of what we do. And so just yesterday I walked into a mall here, and maybe it's not typical for people, but when I go to a mall or whatever, and it's when I need something, I'm like, okay, it's time. You need a new pair of jeans, you need a new sweater, and maybe a bit of new underwear, and then I get it, I go home. And when I hear the word, let's go shopping for the purpose of, we don't even know what we buy, it drives me nuts. It's like, that is where we are. We buy shit on purpose that we know we don't even need it. It's like, oh, look, that's on sale. I'm like, do you need it? No, but it's on sale. But it's not the point to buy it. You know,
consumption,
like that kind of thing. And so that all gives you a bigger picture of why landscape, why nature photography, why the idea of, the issue with the planet. And everything.
So overpopulation. You're a tissue engineer. You go to places where people don't go to because it's remote, and it's clearly examples of, yes, if you're coming from Hong Kong, Have you been to Hong Kong?
I was planning on it to visit Anna, but then COVID happened.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So Hong Kong is of all the cities is the densest. Super 7.5 million. So essentially it's like take Toronto and crunch it into like 1/3 the space. So everybody builds up, right?
Yeah.
But a lot more green. How do you tie that back to being a tissue engineer?
I think it's unrelated, really.
No, you can relate it. You can do it.
I mean, there's a sense of like biology, interested in, the biological level of things. How do things work? How can you make things better? Because that's essentially what you're doing. Right now, I do stem cell research that serves the same purpose. In this case, you're not working on the entire system, as of the world, but, you're trying to make a change in someone's personal issues.
Right.
So yeah, always something for the better. I always try to show people there's different ways. There's, you can do this about that problem. You can, probably that.
So the podcast is really about inspiring listeners from people's energy. So one of the things they'll realize is, dude, this guy talks fast. Your energy is up, and you don't even drink coffee, which is just amazing. Okay, so we have that going. How did you become you? Like, what? Do you have siblings?
No.
You're the only baby?
Yeah. Which made it a bit hard for me to leave home, right? Because I have a really good, intact family relationship.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. And so what were your parents like that you would become such a conservationally oriented person?
Well, they were both like, I would say like the typical kind of normal workers. My mom works as a nurse. My dad works as I don't even know what the English word for that is. He just worked. He's retired now in some kind of assembly hall, like, with his hands, like, hardworking jobs.
Yeah.
And then I went to school, and then I started to learn a job after school, and then decided to go back to school, night school, get my high school degree, and then go study. They were like, we don't know, because, my school grades weren't the best.
Yeah.
But that's just because I assumed that when you like between 9 and 14, 15, 16, you don't fucking know what you want to do with your life. How would you know? But people expect you to leave school and say, I'm going to become a lawyer.
Right.
And then you haven't even figured out that you have an issue memorizing stuff, which is all you do when you're a lawyer, right? So it took me for years, but that's why I got good at what I did after, because then I knew exactly what I didn't want. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to university, I'm going to study something with science, and then see what happens.
Amazing.
Didn't plan to get my PhD. I was just, okay, I'm just going to go for how long it works.
Just made sense.
And then I did, and then everything just naturally happened from there.
Wicked. Which city did you grow up in?
It's called Kaiserslautern.
Kaiserslautern?
It's very close to Ramstein, which is a very big American air base, and that's pretty close to Frankfurt.
Got it.
So an hour south of Frankfurt. Right.
Oh, man. Yeah, my head is bursting. I love it. And I'm not really going to hit you, but I love it. Okay, so first book or many books?
It was the first. Now that I moved to the States, I'm thinking of writing a post-pandemic book.
Okay.
With a chronological timeline about all the things that did and did not go well.
So you consider yourself, you can sort of pick up on the fact that as an engineer and as a scientist, you understand the scientific method and the training of saying, okay, hold on. The train of popular thinking may be going in one direction, but that isn't necessarily the true direction. There is a kind of truth somewhere, and how to get to it. So do you consider yourself a contrarian thinker? Like sort of saying, everybody's thinking this, I'm going to look over there because that might actually be more accurate.
Yeah, almost. I would say when something happens, like the pandemic, I don't think I want to do something different because everyone does it. I'm like, this really doesn't feel right. Or like sometimes like, why do we do this? And then I go into some research and I'm like, okay, what could be the reason behind this? And then if I have a hard time finding it, I'm like, no, this doesn't make any sense, but I don't have the platform to express this so people would hear it. So it doesn't really matter.
One of the things that really impressed me about Anna, some people are scientists or scientifically minded, but they don't seem to have an understanding of the scientific method. From her training as a teacher and also as a practitioner, it's very clear to her how to do science properly and the boundaries. And I get the feeling of this from you as well. So did you guys ever talk shop as well in that sense and feel a kind of an alignment?
which is really got along very well from the beginning.
Right.
So like everything we talked about, I mean, we started with science, obviously, because it was a science fair, right?
Right.
But then we talked about everything, and it was just
amazing.
Perfect, yeah. I actually had a concert in the city the night after the
You
science
had
fair.
a concert.
Yeah, because I'm a musician as well, and
of course you are.
and I sketched the concert in Rhodes. It was on the island of Rhodes, and I was there like 6 years before with my wife, and I met a guy that was a guitarist, and he would play a show in this one bar every week, and I said, "Hey, can I play there when I get there? Have free time on a Thursday night." And then Anna came with all the people she knew. And then it was this bar full of people. We all got wasted.
Okay.
And we had to be at the conference again at 8 a.m. So that's where we okay, we got to do.
And I'm also a musician, right? Do you fix cars?
No, not yet.
No. Electronics?
No.
Ah, you suck.
Yeah.
Dude, you're amazing. Okay, shall we go on to the next photo?
Let's do it. I don't even know which one of the two I sent you it is. One of my favorites.
Okay. So this is called Namibia.
Glad you picked that.
I didn't pick. It's just the way because some people send. I say 4. Some people send 5. Some people send 10. And it's just the way, because I don't want to see them. Mm-hmm. The way it all gets kind of processed is, I mean, the rest aren't even downloaded. So this is what it is.
All right. I love that it downloaded that picture right here.
Okay. So in the photograph, it's very warm. What I love is that it's completely an opposite to the previous photographs. So stick it in my eye because I love it. There's a guy in the photograph wearing a sort of long sleeve, dark long sleeve shirt. He's wearing a black baseball cap. The arm is tanned. The light's super warm sun, afternoon sun, maybe morning. I'd say it's afternoon. In the background, out of focus, are trees that are, shrubby, open. It doesn't look like a North American kind of forest. But the image really is this man, it could be you because it's the same earrings, warmly, generously, lovingly holding on to a beautiful, humongous cheetah.
Yes.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it is me with a bit of more facial hair, which I don't grow out because I have the hair growth of a 5-year-old.
Okay.
But it was during my Namibia trip. In the pandemic, as you see in 2021,
yeah,
I would say I traveled more in the pandemic than ever before.
Wow.
Because those trips, they were by definition, the perfect isolation.
Right.
Because I had a Jeep with a tent on top. I would drive around about 3,500 kilometers through Namibia.
Wow.
And I would always just sleep on my car.
Yeah.
So the only exposure I had to people ever was maybe on the counter of a national park through the open window of my car.
1 second. Have you had COVID yet or no?
I had it way before it got popular.
So you got COVID.
The very first summer. Yeah, in 2020.
Okay.
I got it, and
I don't want to take that, but let's talk about the cheetah. Go.
So this was pretty much towards the end of my trip. I can't really say where it was because the people that owned the place asked me not to because that's not an official picture. They don't do the thing where they have cheetahs and they have you pay money to take pictures with them, right? Because then again, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So the purpose was something different. It was a campground. I got there and there was no other car as on every other campground that I went to at that time. And so the owners, a very nice couple, invited me in for some tea at night. I was like, oh, that's nice because they didn't have the official food serving because there were no people. So they said, we still want to give you food. So I walked in and I saw the picture of the cheetah hanging on the wall. I said, oh, wow, this is one of my favorite animals. I wish I could see one.
Yeah.
I mean, I did see some on my safari a week before, but up far away, right?
Yeah.
And then we would talk. And as we talked about the same stuff, we're talking since 50 minutes and 16 seconds now. They said, we have two here, right? I'm like, what do you mean you have two here? And so they told me the story. There were 2 baby cheetahs that were brought to them, I think 3 years back, where hunters shot the parent animals, right? Okay. And Namibia doesn't have animal protection programs, so they would have just killed the pups.
The cubs,
the cubs. Why would I say pup?
It's okay. I need a beer. Because they're like pups.
And the cubs were brought to them, and the people said, we don't know what to do because we found them, there was just some shootings happening and whatever. And they said, you know what, because they were farmers, they had a huge area around the house.
Okay.
We will just raise them. Because they knew they loved animals. They knew if we don't, we will bring them there. It's not even a place you can bring them. They will just be killed. So they raised them. and in an open field. It was fenced,
Right.
but more for the sake of their own protection, so they couldn't run off the street. And displayed like what you see out here, probably that size. Like
okay. So out the window is essentially a big kind of flat area, very, very large and expansive.
Super large. Like, and he said, I feed them once a night. They will come to the fence. But I also go into the area to do some maintenance every once in a while. And tomorrow morning I will do some maintenance. We will not have any guests signed until like 3 days from now. So if you want, you can come with me. They are not territorial, so they're not really fighting any species that comes in their cage. But they were raised in a surrounding where they always see humans, so they don't see you as a threat, right? So we walked in, and it was just like tall orange grass.
Okay, I have to interrupt for a second.
Yeah, sure.
The image, I don't think I made it clear enough, is that you're hugging this enormous cheetah cat that's leaning against your leg. Your head, your chin is on its head.
And it's smiling.
It's got a smile on it. It looks like you're kind of ruffling its neck. And its eyes are closed. And it looks like pure abandon and tenderness.
Yes.
I just wanted the listener to go like, okay, in case I missed it. But you're saying, so then in the morning...
So we walked in, and he said, I have a little cup of milk that they said they may come, they may not come. Right. So as I said, they're not trained animals. So, and at some point, I heard like an increasing volume of like the ruffling bushes and something that was like footsteps. I go, oh man.
Oh wow.
And then one came running towards me and jumped up on me.
Oh wow.
And
your fight or flight instinct is like
internally I was freaking out because that animal was like taller than me.
Yes.
And so he also said before, like if they come and if they would get up on you, you have to be careful because they have one claw. They cannot like retract, right? It is just out there.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure if it is a scar, but like the long sleeve sweater has a huge hole in it now because like it got stuck. It was like hanging in my long sleeve, right? So I went down so the animal could go down. And then he placed that milk on the ground. Okay. And I don't want to say it yet, but I have to, otherwise the story doesn't work. There's a second cheetah behind me, right?
Okay,
here.
I
here,
see
right?
I can just see it.
So the two cheetahs laid down because I initially told you there were two cups, right? Yeah. So those are the two. So they were laid down and drinking the milk, and then he said you need to put your hand next to it so that they get your scent.
Right.
And if they start licking your hand, that's when you can do whatever.
Nice.
So, and that's what happened. And then he said, I'm going to fix that. There was, I don't know what it was, something made of wood. He had to use his hammer. And he said, just sit there and see what happens. Yeah. One is really jealous. So if you start like touching one, the other one will come and that kind of stuff. Just don't make sudden movements and nothing coming from behind their head because they will like freak out. And just based on their body weight and whatever, if they make sudden movements. And then this one would lay on me. And as I was hugging it, it would fall asleep. It fell asleep in my lap. And you know, as you can imagine from a normal cat, when they do the
purring,
that thing, it vibrated my whole body.
Amazing.
My whole body vibrated. And I was sitting like that for like, I think half an hour.
Amazing. So, okay. One person told me a story once that I didn't. So did it lick your hand?
Yes, and my face, and it really hurt.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes,
it really hurt.
People who have baby cats, or people who have cats at home, and they feel the roughness of the cat tongue. They're just like, oh, okay, cat's tongue is rough. And he was saying that, like when it licks you, because they use their tongue to remove the meat off of bone.
Yes.
And it was like, I don't know. So you're the second person I've spoken to. Yes. So, yes.
Yeah, they do that.
It really hurts.
It really hurts, especially in my face. There was a time before when I was sitting like this. I was laying on the ground. I was like in all kinds of positions because you couldn't really, when they walked over you, that you just leaned back and then you were on the ground. And and this was, as I said, for 30 minutes, I would sit there like this, and hands down, this was the most beautiful moment of all of my travels.
Amazing. Thomas, like it's amazing. Amazing. I think so hopefully somebody who's listening to this is going to look at all the photos because the photographs are fantastic. Hopefully hear in your voice that okay, so let's say you're talking to 15-year-old, even 20-year-old, 30-year-old, whoever it is, who comes to you and says, what do you want to do? And you're like, I don't know, what do you want to do? And they go, I don't know. What do you want to do? So how do you slap them awake? How do we mention to them how amazing the world is?
I think it's you can't simply answer this question, really. It's like also a chapter in my book, and I think we became disconnected over time.
Okay.
So someone who lives in a big city and had no exposure to nature will not care about nature.
Sure.
So I couldn't come with these pictures and be like, look at this waterfall.
Yeah.
So it's a waterfall. So
yeah. So what? Yeah.
I'm just going to take a weekend trip and I go. Whatever. Yeah. But if it's gone, I don't care.
Right.
You know, as long as the Wi-Fi works.
Right.
So it's not. That's what I'm saying. Like it gets like we will have a hard time convincing next generations from the beauty of nature if we disconnect from it. So
yeah. How connected were you as a kid?
Well, I grew up in a very small town with like about 800 people. My parents, or the house I lived in, the transition time after I sold all my stuff and I moved to California, I lived in my old child's room again with my parents, which was amazing. And it's like a house right at the forest edge, right? Right. So my time out of the house was always like building a tree house, trying to catch fish in the creek, falling from a bike, breaking my ankle. It doesn't matter. Then just watch out better next time.
Sure.
The total opposite of today.
Right. Well, so two things. One of the things was, when you think about the world's forests, and then it was really surprising to me to being in Canada. Canada's humongous, and hearing like which areas have the largest forests. It wasn't Canada, and it wasn't the U.S. Europe has technically has the largest forested lands, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, I would have not guessed that.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And then I think because if you go north in Canada, it stops being forested. It's just essentially taiga and whatever. Like it's just it's not very treed. So the fact that you grew up close to forest, but I'm assuming no large animals.
Yeah, just deer, like nothing else.
Okay. So you're a musician, you're a writer, you're an author, you're a gifted photographer, you're obviously a gifted scientific researcher. Okay, how do we put seeds in people's heads to go like, just go for it, just live, just, you have one life, make every second count?
I think people should just go and not go by conventions, not think in a box as like, what would my parents think if I don't do this job? What do my friends think if I now decide to do this? You just have to do what you like to do, because essentially if you're not happy, then your whole life is pointless.
Sure. Okay.
Right? It just really comes down to this. Like if you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh shit, then change something.
Yeah.
Like the moment you wake up in the morning and the first thing that comes to your head is like, I don't want to do this or that, or later today, shit, there's soccer practice. Stop. If you don't want to go, stop it, right? Wake up to, like I did. Like I did a job, I didn't like it. I could have, and I talked to many people in my company. No one liked their job. But I went back to school. My parents said, do you think you can do that? Because your grades weren't, good enough. Yeah. Other people, my friends said, like, oh, you're 22. You really think it's smart to now go back to university? Because they already had mortgages on their house.
Right, and obviously it was, because look at you now.
Yeah, exactly. And you will never see it in the moment you make the change, but every change usually leads to something better. So,
brother,
go for it.
Brother, okay, let's make that selfie. I'm going to stop this recording because I could talk to you forever. Thank you.
I thank you for coming.
Danke. Thank you.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.